Alright guys, new video. Today I'm going to be showing you the best decks to play in the new Anti-Spell Festival. Thank God it's a festival and not whatever the heck we just had last time with that competitive ladder. It's actually just a festival. So hopefully it's going to be fun. The whole point of this one is no spell cards. Spell cards are totally banned. Every spell card that has ever come out. You would think that the best decks automatically are trap decks, but we'll go over it. We'll talk about it. Here are all the forbidden cards. Yugioh Organization. This is the website that consolidated everything. These are all of the cards that are forbidden that are not spells. So we've got the Barrier Statue, D-Boys, Denko Seko. Whew! Good thing that card is banned. Otherwise, that could have been very bad. Fossil Dyna, Jougin. This card burns. This card destroys yourself. And you've got a couple of different burn cards. Goes in match and all of the other floodgates. Rivalry, Royal Decree, Skill Drain, There Can Only Be One, Wall of Revealing Light, all banned. So although trap decks you would assume are the best, a lot of trap cards are actually banned. And then on top of that, Solemn Judgment is limited to one. And then some other burn cards are semi-limited, and Solemn Strike is semi-limited. So you can imagine certain cards are going to be a lot better based on that. But let's go over to the decks now. I've made a variety of different decks for you guys. So right off the bat, we've got Traptrix. Traptrix is a very good deck. It's an almost all trap base deck. So I'm going to show you some of the cards you play. Obviously the Ash Blossoms, the Traptrix cards, Myrmelio, Dionea, Mantis. But what's really strong about this deck is you can play Lord of the Heavenly Prison. This protects all set cards. So even if your opponent has like a duster, and what I mean by duster is not Harpy's Feather Duster, I mean like old school duster, like heavy storm duster, stuff like that, they can't even pop this stuff if they wanted to. This sets any spell or a trap card from the deck, although you're definitely setting traps. And then you can play any combination of just really strong trap cards. Floodgate Trap Hole is outrageous. Pendulums are technically allowed, although pendulum spells are not allowed, but pendulum monsters are allowed, which is kind of cool. But Floodgate Trap Hole actually flips all special summoned monsters. All monsters your opponent summons, monster or monsters. So if they pendulum summon 5 monsters, you are flipping all 5 of those monsters face down. And then they can't flip back up. So you've got that stuff. Lost Winds, a floating trap. And then you can search all of these various hole cards, which is really crazy. And of course, Judgment is at 1. But like I said, there are countermeasures. Yeah, this deck is actually really strong. It's one of the best trap cards, like trap decks, period. If this deck goes first, your opponent is going to have a very seriously difficult time playing against this deck. Because, I mean, once it's got 5 traps set, unless they're drawing either red reboot or evenly matched, the game is over. Like, they're going to have a very tough time beating this deck. But Traptrix is a very strong trap deck. Definitely give this a consideration. I think the only downside is a lot of the extra deck is in archetype URs, so it can be a little bit expensive. In that regard, it can be a little bit of a problem. But the main deck is actually fairly cheap. Just use hand traps that you have, and most of it is rares and SRs, which is pretty cool. And then again, main deck, the extra deck is really where you gotta think about your kind of levels and which cards you want to play. Next, Jinzo Turbo. This is a good one. This one I just came up with like a few minutes ago. So they didn't hit Jinzo. All trap decks essentially lose to Jinzo. Second Jinzo hits the field, unless they have a Solemn Judgment, the duel is pretty much over. So if you're playing against Traptrix, I built this. This is a going second deck, then main deck's Jinzo. So if Jinzo hits the board, unless they have a Judgment, they literally lose the duel. The idea here is this is a typical like OTK 6-axis Lunalight deck. You have 2 normal summons in this deck. It's Jinzo and Fairy Tale Luna. You can adjust it. The biggest drawback to this deck is look at all the URs. It's like raining money in this video. It's like crazy. Every card is a UR, but there are so many easy ways to summon Jinzo. You have Astral Karibo, which you just reveal any monster with a number from your extra deck, and it becomes that level. So let's say you reveal Draglubion, and you get to special summon Astral Karibo, and then you're locked into Xseeds. And then after getting locked into Xseeds, you summon the Astral Karibo. It becomes level 8. But like I said, it locks you into Xseed. But what it doesn't lock you into, it only locks you into summoning Xseed monsters from the extra deck. But you can still normal summon. You can still special summon from the main deck. So you can actually just special summon Astral Karibo and then just normal summon and then just tribute summon Jinzo. Or you can special summon Gizmekarochi and then just tribute summon Jinzo. or you can summon Prankotrops and then just easily just tribute summon Jinzo. You can summon a danger, summon Jinzo. Any of these dangers, activate, special summon, normal summon Jinzo. Like, it's super easy. You can special summon Alpha, tribute it, summon Jinzo. Against most trap decks, which I would assume that the majority are going to be trap decks, because I think pendulums, although they are good, the problem with pendulums is that you're going to have a very, very tough time. With pendulums, you're going to have a very, very tough time playing without a lot of the really good pendulum spell cards. Like, a lot of pendulum monsters are strong, but you're going to have a tough time playing with some of the really good, like, search spells, like pen call and stuff like that. It's going to be a little bit rough. But this deck is kind of crazy going second. And then you've got all of the, even without Jinzo, because Jinzo's kind of unsearchable in this deck, you have all of the other great stuff that goes with this deck, which is you can main deck red reboot because you're always going second, so you're not stressed about it. You can main deck evenly match. Again, you're going second. You're guaranteed to go second. They only have one copy of Solemn Judgment. They have one Solemn Judgment, and that's it. And no more counter traps. So this can be really, really strong. And then, of course, because you have so much draw power in this deck, you have the dangers. You can very easily get to the one of the 3 copies of Jinzo. Once Jinzo hits the field, you basically have won that duel. The extra deck is just a bunch of like OTK and level 8 enablers. Just play what you have for the extra deck. And another important card in this entire thing is definitely Divine Arsenal Zeus. It's one of the most important monsters in the entire festival because it sends everything on the field to the graveyard. That is a really strong effect against trap decks. So definitely consider that. This is probably the deck that if I had the UR Dust, I would probably make this deck. So if you have this lying around or you already have the level rank 8 OTK deck, make this. But if you don't, it can be a little bit rough because this is kind of an expensive deck. There's a lot of URs, as you can see on the screen. I do have some extra gems, so I might end up making it. But the only drawback, and literally the only drawback and the only reason I might not play this deck is because it just is so expensive. Next deck, we've got the Adamancipators. Adamancipator is another deck. Again, you would think that, man, this is a trap festival. Not really. It just stops you from playing spells. You can play Adamancipators. Adamancipators really don't even play spells. As a matter of fact, Adamancipators used to be a deck that used Sekka's Light because it really didn't even need the spell cards. Same thing with like Burning Abyss. You can play Burning Abyss. I didn't make like a dedicated deck profile for it, but you can play Burning Abyss because, again, the entire point of the deck is it's a monster mash deck. You can just use mostly monsters and it's good enough. You don't have to worry about Mystic Mind coming out because number 1, it's a spell, number 2, it's banned in Master Duel, which is really awesome. But this deck is actually really strong. It just needs to just put one rock monster on board and you just go off from there. Again, I recommend strongly playing the evenly matched and the red reboot if you're playing like a combo deck or kind of like a going second-ish deck. This is more of a combo deck, but I definitely recommend the red reboot and the evenly matched because if you don't play those, things can get very rough, especially with the set 5 pass meta. But yeah, this deck is actually really strong. Again, don't fall for the tricks. You don't have to play a trap deck in the anti-spell festival. You can still play combo decks. You just need to be very intelligent about the way you build it, but you can definitely still play a combo deck. It doesn't have to play, you don't have to play a trap deck. So this is another one. Adamancipator, I think, is actually going to be a fairly strong deck in this game. Next, we've got everybody's villain. We've got Eldlich. Eldlich is a really, really frustrating deck to play against in regular ladder, but keep in mind, there aren't a ton of floodgates that you can actually play. You can still play a crap load of purple cards, and yeah, this deck is really, really strong. You've got obviously an access to Lord of the Heavenly Prison, which has additional synergy in Eldritch. I have to fix up this extra deck actually because I converted this from my regular Eldritch deck, which doesn't play the X Seeds, but you should play the rank 10 X Seeds, and you should play Zeus for sure. So just if you're looking at this, you should definitely convert it a little bit. But Heavenly Prison is insane. It protects all set cards from destruction. You have access to all of these different trap cards. The best draw spell in the entire game for trap decks is Reckless Greed. It's a really, really good card because it basically lets you draw 2 and then you skip the next 2 draw phases. If you chain 2 Reckless Greeds, you get to draw 4 cards, and you only have to skip the next 2 draw phases, despite the fact that you activated 2 of them and drew 4 cards. And then, of course, you can play stuff like Floodgate Trap Hole, really, really good against like Adamancipators. If they summon a monster, you Floodgate Trap Hole. Now they're not controlling a rock anymore, and hand. They're kind of locked in. Lost Wind is a card that floats, evenly matched, obviously, as I've said before, Imperm. And then we've got some of the Eldritch cards. Dogmatic Punishment's really good because it has all of the additional utility, getting to pop and stuff like that. It's obviously very, very strong. And then we've got the limited cards, semi-limited and limited strike, judgment. This is one of the only floodgates that you can actually play. It's called Mistake. It prevents both players from adding cards to their hand. I don't add a single card in this deck to my hand. Like, look at it. There's nothing. You don't add any cards. Golden Land is the only Eldritch card that adds from deck to hand. It's banned. You can't play. It's a spell card. So you actually do not add any cards from your deck to your hand. So it literally doesn't matter. You add Eldritch back from graveyard, but you don't add it from hand. So this can actually stop things like traptrix. This can stop things like... Adamemancipator. This can stop things like Super Heavy Samurai, Dino Morpheus. This can stop a lot of the other decks in the game. It's one of the only floodgates that didn't get hit, and I would recommend maybe maxing out on this. Definitely trying. It's very good going first, and it has a rough time going second, obviously. And then we've got some of the other Eldritch cards here, the ones that are still available. For the extra deck, it's mostly just the Nadir package and then some links here and there. I have to edit the extra deck a little bit. Like I said, I was playing it from my ladder deck profile, so I was like banishing. I didn't really care. But there's some cool things that you can do. You can steal a light monster. You can actually steal a Baron de Fleur by going into this with one of your monsters. So you can use one of these to go into this, and then this is a wind monster. So you use this and any other monster to go into this, and then steal a Baron de Fleur out of your opponent's graveyard. It's a cool, like, little play that you can do. But since you're not playing Pot of Extravagance or Prosperity, you can actually reduce, like, these guys and, like, reduce this and reduce this and reduce this, and then you have 5 new slots. But you should definitely play maybe like Pallades and a copy of Zeus for sure, just for outing other back row decks. So that is the Eldritch deck, and next let's get to another deck here. Next we're going to go with Paleozoic Frog. This is a deck that I am most likely going to be playing because I already have it complete. So that'll kind of like make the process a little bit easier. I already have this done. So Paleozoic Frog is a deck that used to be meta a long time ago. I was actually playing it with Grasslick Screener, but unfortunately, obviously, you can't do that because it's a spell card. But this deck is very good. It's a very good trap deck. It has built-in archetypal Spawn Trap card removal, which is the Paleozoic Oilionoids. Candina is very good against like Adamancipator and combo decks, for example, because it books the monster. Dinomorpheus is also very good against the combo decks that would be good in this. Lost Wind is a trap card that actually sets itself back. Infinite Impermanence, and then we've got the 3 traps you kind of have to play. So yeah, this is actually a very strong deck. The only thing that kind of sucks is Toad is at 1 because it's just at 1 in the game in general. But again, you can play a lot of similar stuff. You have Elder Entity Natis because you can play things like the Dogmatica package, which is really cool. I'm still thinking about playing it or not, so I'm not completely sure. But yeah, this is the extra deck. Most of the Paleozoics are actually really cheap. The only thing you'll actually have to spend anything on is literally just Totally Awesome. It's Totally Awesome, and that's it. That's basically... This deck is probably one of the cheaper decks of the entire format. And again, this is a festival. It's not a ladder, so you don't have to constantly be winning. As long as you're a good player, you're going to be winning regardless. So, in all honesty, you don't have to like jump right to the top. And then the rest of just whatever staples you have, mostly SRs. This is the only card that I technically would have to craft. And honestly, it's not even really that good. All it does is just send a set Spawn Trap card to the grave, a set card in Spawn Trap card zone to the graveyard, and then set a Paleozoic from deck. It's a Link 2, which isn't even really that amazing. And then on top of that, if it's in the graveyard, you can banish it to protect the card. And that effect, you can banish it out of the graveyard, even if this card was sent off of like Dogmatic Punishment, because it isn't like summoned back from graveyard. It just protects. So you can send off Dogmatic and then protect the set card. But yeah, this is most likely either this or that Jinzo deck is probably one of the 2 decks that I'm going to be playing. But I do have 2 honorable mention decks I'm about to show you. So this is the first honorable mention deck. This is the Super Heavy Samurai deck. This deck gets hype every single time for just because any time there's like no trap, no monster kind of a meta or anything like that, people always bring this deck up. But yeah, this deck is actually like kind of interesting. Basically, what it does is it can actually steal spawn trap cards out of your opponent's graveyard with its bigger, like, XYZ monster. Not XYZ, it was bigger synchro monster, the Susanoo. It can actually steal spawn trap cards out of your opponent's graveyard. It's actually kind of decent. And I imagine in this festival, there's going to be quite a few spawn trap cards that are generic that are being played. The major drawback to this deck is that the extra deck is a little pricey. I'll be honest. The extra deck can get a little bit expensive, and they do lock themselves into their own archetype sometimes. They do have a Link 1 that is actually pretty decent, which makes it really good. The best cards in the entire archetype are definitely the Scareclaw or the Scarecrow, and then also the Susanoo. These two are like the best two cards in the archetype. And then if you can manage to summon the super heavy Samurai Steam train, it would actually be pretty decent. But this is my other honorable mention. I just have one more honorable mention to show you guys. And now this is the final deck that I'm going to be showing you guys today, and it is actually Dino Morpheus. And I'm not going to lie, this one I'm kind of tempted to make too. This deck is going to be kind of crazy because unlike other decks only have one copy of Judgment, this deck has multiple copies of Judgment. So just to start, obviously, this deck is basically a dinosaur deck that relies on paying half your life points constantly. Unfortunately, you don't have access to Fossil Dig, but you do have access to other consistency cards, which is really cool. And that makes this deck significantly better. Now, you pay half your life points constantly, but you don't actually kill yourself, which is really good because the spell and trap cards prevent effect and battle damage by banishing themselves, so your opponent can't just like attack for like 100 damage or something. Thank God, right? But the deck is actually really strong, and I'll go over some of the different components of the deck here. So like I said, you have your in-archetype counter trap. If you control a Dino Morpheus monster, you pay half your life points, negate a monster, spawn, or trap, or negate a spawn trap, which is really cool because again, if your opponent has red reboot, evenly matched, stuff like that, it's a good thing this deck this is in the archetype, which is really cool. And yeah, it has some sort of in-archetype protection. If your life points are 2,000 or less and you would take damage, you can banish this card from your graveyard and take no damage. So that's how you basically protect yourself. All of the traps, not this trap, but all of the other traps have that same effect to protect you. The other cool tech that you can play in this is the Soul of the Supreme King, which allows you to pay half your life points and special summon Supreme King Zark from your deck, which is this dude. Ignoring its summoning conditions, but he returns to the extra deck later, and that has an additional protection effect here for him. But what is really cool, and then you get to special summon a ton of different things. But what is really cool is that when Zark gets special summoned, he destroys all cards your opponent controls immediately, which is insane. Like, that is such a cool part of it. And then also, this card cannot be destroyed by your opponent's card effects. And then if this card or your opponent can't target it, if this monster destroys an opponent's monster by battle, you can summon any Supreme King monster from your deck or extra deck, which is of course going to be Supreme King Clear Wing. And then if this card's summoned, you can destroy all face-up monsters your opponent controls again, which is like, it's insane. It's really cool. But then of course the Dinomorphia cards are in their own way cool, because obviously this gains life points, loses attack equal to your life points, but obviously you're going to keep reducing your life points. Then you've got like Lilith to search any trap card. You can set anything. The Ferret Flames is kind of a crazy card. It allows you to force your opponent to shuffle away their monsters based on your life points, which is just like a crazy effect. Only available in this deck because you're constantly paying life points. And then of course you've got like all of the other just good trap cards. You can actually, again, you can mix this up. Whatever trap cards you think are good, you can play Rush Recklessly. I've tried to show you a variety of different good trap cards in all of these different videos, different cool tech options. I think this trap card, the Soul of the Supreme King, could basically be played in every single trap deck that I've shown here today, as long as they don't like lock yourself into an archetype. But this card is seriously nuts. You activate this and you summon Zark, pop everything they have, and then you get to float into other stuff and summon other monsters. This card is absolutely insane. I can't believe it's on a trap. Just ignoring summoning conditions, summon one of the most difficult monsters to summon off of a trap card. It's kind of crazy. Again, the only issue with this deck is, again, it's one of sort of a similar problem, which is the URs are, it's a lot of URs, right? You've got the Domain, you've got the Teresia. These packs are no longer available, so it's actually kind of difficult to get these. At least with the other packs, you could have gotten them, but these have gone out of rotation, so it's a little tough to get them. This is actually a new card. It's in the new pack, so if you buy the new pack, you may or may not unlock this. And Zark, you may or may not unlock these two. I can't guarantee it, but unfortunately, in Archetype, Dinomorphia has 3 URs. Maybe if you complete the Battle Pass, you treat yourself, you buy yourself this deck. But this is my last deck. It's another kind of honorable mention here. But if you enjoyed this video, definitely subscribe. And if you have any other decks that I missed, please let me know in the comment section down below. And thank you for watching. La, 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 la.